Welcome to English with Zenko Master. Get ready to learn something new today.
I didn't plan to walk into the forest. I only wanted to clear my head. I had taken the bus out of town and got off near the hills. I thought I would walk for an hour, maybe two. But time passed and I kept going. The truth is, I didn't want to go back. Not yet. My job had ended 2 days ago. I hadn't told anyone. I didn't want to hear fake sympathy or simple advice. I didn't want to pretend everything was fine. I had worked there for almost 4 years. I gave so much of myself to that place. I stayed late, helped others, and kept smiling. But they still let me go. They said it wasn't personal. Felt personal to me. As I walked, the trees grew taller and closer together. The sky was gray and quiet. The air felt cold, but I didn't notice at first. My thoughts were too loud. My chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me. I followed a narrow path that I didn't recognize. I stepped over roots and rocks. I walked past small streams and thick green bushes. I didn't care where I was going. I just wanted to move. After a while, I found a place to stop. It was a small clearing with soft moss and fallen leaves. I dropped my backpack and sat down on the ground. My legs were tired. My hands were cold. I stared at the trees and said nothing. Then I cried. It wasn't a loud cry. It was soft and slow, like a leak from something broken. The tears came without warning. My face felt warm, even in the cold air. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve and looked down. That's when I saw it. A red fox was standing a few steps away. It didn't move. It just watched me. I had never seen a fox this close before. Its eyes were dark, and its fur looked thick and clean. It looked calm, not afraid. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Maybe I had walked too long and needed rest. But the fox was real. It didn't run. It didn't blink. It only watched me. I sat still, unsure what to do. I didn't want to scare it. I didn't want to speak. But something inside me felt strange, like I wasn't alone anymore. I lowered my eyes and whispered, "Why are you here?" Of course, I didn't expect an answer. But in that quiet moment, it felt like something had changed. My breathing slowed. My body relaxed. I didn't feel as lost as before. The fox moved closer. Not quickly, but slowly and carefully. Stopped a few feet from me and sat down. I could see the detail in its fur. I could hear it breathing. I didn't speak again. I didn't need to. I felt like the fox understood something about me. Something I hadn't said out loud. I stayed like that for a long time, sitting on the forest floor with a fox nearby. I thought about my life. I thought about how I always tried to be strong. I never wanted others to see me cry. I never wanted to feel weak. But here in the forest, I couldn't hide it. And somehow that felt okay. I remembered the day I lost my job. I sat in the office and listened to their words. "We're sorry. It's not your fault. There have been changes." I nodded and thanked them. Then I left with a smile. But when I got home, I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. I didn't move for hours. I didn't even turn on the lights. I remembered how my boyfriend stopped calling. First, he said he was busy. Then he didn't reply at all. I waited. I sent messages. I hoped he would explain. But he never did. I remembered the last time my mother called. She asked if I was eating well. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She didn't notice my voice sounded tired. We spoke for 5 minutes. Then she said goodbye. I kept all of that inside. I didn't want to worry anyone. I didn't want to admit how lonely I felt. But now, with this fox beside me, it felt safe to remember. The fox stood and walked in a small circle. Then it lay down near my feet. It didn't touch me, but I felt its presence. It was warm and quiet, like a friend who didn't need to speak. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like earth and leaves. I looked at the trees around me. They were tall and still. The forest didn't judge me. It didn't ask for anything. It only listened. I closed my eyes for a while. I let my mind rest. I didn't think about what would happen tomorrow. I didn't think about who I should call or what I should fix. I just sat there, with the fox, in the forest. When I opened my eyes again, the sky had changed. The light was softer. Evening was coming. I reached into my backpack and took out some bread and water. I ate slowly. I offered a small piece of bread to the fox. It didn't take it. It only watched me. I smiled a little. "You're just here to keep me company, aren't you?" It blinked once, as if it understood. Then it looked away toward the trees. For a moment, I wondered if I was going crazy, talking to a wild animal, sitting in the woods like this. But I didn't care. I felt calm. I felt human again. As the light faded, I pulled my jacket around me. I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. I wanted to stay a little longer. I wanted to feel this peace for one more night. I built a small fire with dry sticks. The flames were small but warm. I sat near the fire and watched the fox rest. Its ears twitched now and then, but it didn't move away. That night, I lay on the ground and looked at the sky. The stars began to appear one by one. I thought about who I used to be. I thought about who I wanted to become. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have a plan. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. And when I finally fell asleep, the fox was still there beside me. Before I share the rest of my story, could you please tell me where you're from? It gives me strength to know there's someone out there who listens to me, who understands me. It means a lot to me. When I opened my eyes, the sun was already above the trees. The sky was clear. A soft wind touched my face. My body felt cold, but my mind was calm. I sat up and looked around. The fire was gone. Only gray ash remained on the ground. The forest was quiet. Birds were singing somewhere in the distance. I looked for the fox. It was still there. It sat at the edge of the clearing, watching me. It didn't come closer, but it didn't leave either. I stood slowly and stretched my arms. My body ached from sleeping on the ground, but I didn't complain. I was grateful. Something had changed in me. I didn't know what it was, but I felt stronger. Not fully healed, not yet, but something inside had shifted. The fox stood up and walked in a small circle again. Then it stopped and looked at the path ahead. I followed its eyes. There was a trail I hadn't seen before. It led deeper into the forest. I wasn't planning to stay another day. I had no map, no real plan. But something told me to keep walking. I picked up my backpack, brushed off the leaves, and looked at the fox. It didn't speak, but somehow I knew it wanted me to follow. So I did. Path was narrow and uneven. The trees were close together and the light was dim. But I kept going. I listened to the sound of my steps and the wind in the branches. I listened to my own breathing. The fox stayed ahead of me. Sometimes it stopped and waited. Sometimes it disappeared behind trees, but it always came back. I didn't feel afraid. I trusted it. After a while, we reached a small hill. I climbed slowly, using my hands for balance. When I reached the top, I saw something strange. There was an old wooden bench. It looked out over the trees below. It was simple and worn, but strong. The fox sat beside it and waited. I sat down and looked at the view. The forest stretched far in every direction. There were no houses, no roads, no people, just trees and sky and silence. It was beautiful. I took out my water bottle and drank. My throat was dry. I felt tired but calm. I looked at the fox again. I used to love places like this, I said quietly in my mind. When I was younger, I dreamed of living near trees and lakes. I thought about those dreams. I had let go of them over time. I had chosen jobs and people that didn't match my heart. I had made decisions to survive, not to feel alive. I looked at my hands. They were dry and scratched. I looked at my shoes. They were dirty and worn. But for once, I didn't feel small or weak. I felt honest. The fox stood up again. This time, it walked to a tree behind the bench, scratched at the base, then stepped back. I got up and looked closer. There was something hidden under the roots. I knelt and brushed away the dirt. I found an old box made of dark wood. I lifted it out and opened it slowly. Inside was a notebook. Pages were yellow and soft. There were words written in black ink. They were personal. They were full of emotion. I turned a few pages and began to read. The writer was a woman like me. She had also come to the forest when life became too heavy. She had lost people. She had lost herself. But she had found peace here. I kept reading. Page after page, she wrote about her feelings, her pain, her memories, her hope. I felt a deep connection with her, even though I didn't know her name. At the back of the notebook, there was a short letter. It was written to the next person who finds this. She said the forest had helped her heal. She hoped it would help someone else too. Tears filled my eyes again, but they didn't fall. I closed the notebook and held it to my chest. I felt something warm and true inside me. The fox was still there, sat quietly and watched. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stood with the notebook in my hands and breathed. Then I walked back to the bench and sat again. I opened the notebook to the first page and began reading from the start. This time I read slowly. I read about her first night in the forest, how she couldn't sleep because her mind was loud. I read about how she slowly learned to trust the silence. I read about how she let go of old stories that hurt her. Her words were clear. They were not poetic or dramatic. They were simple, honest, like a friend speaking from the heart. She wrote about a fox, too. I paused. She said the fox didn't speak, but it stayed near her, followed her for 3 days. On the last day, it sat by the river and looked at her. That night, she had her first peaceful sleep in years. She never saw it again. I put the notebook down and looked at the fox beside me. I'm not ready to say goodbye yet, I thought. But maybe I didn't need to. Maybe it would stay a little longer. The sun was higher now. The light touched the tops of the trees. I stood and looked at the trail again. I didn't know where it led, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I placed the notebook back in the box. I returned the box to the tree roots and covered it with soil. I wanted someone else to find it one day. I wanted them to feel less alone. The fox stood and walked back toward the path. I followed. We moved quietly through the trees, step by step, moment by moment. I wasn't walking away from something anymore. I was walking toward something new. I kept walking. The forest became more open. The trees stood farther apart and more sunlight touched the ground. I could feel the air changing. It was warmer now, softer somehow. I walked slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to notice everything. The fox was still with me. It didn't walk ahead anymore. It stayed beside me now. We moved together like two people who didn't need to speak. We understood each other without words. After a while, we reached a small stream. The water was clear and cold. I bent down and touched it with my fingers. Then I washed my face. It felt good. Clean. Like I was starting again. I sat down on a rock near the water. The fox sat across from me. We looked at each other for a while. I remembered something then, a memory I had pushed away. I was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I had run into the woods behind my childhood home. I was upset. My parents had been arguing again. I didn't want to hear their voices anymore. That day, I had sat under a tree and cried quietly. I didn't understand their fights. I only knew it made the house feel cold. I remembered wishing someone would come and sit with me. Now I realized something. That feeling, that wish for someone quiet and kind, had never left me. Even as an adult, I still carried that hope inside me. Maybe that's why the fox felt so familiar. Maybe it was always with me in some way. I looked down at the stream. I had spent so much time trying to be the strong one, the helper, the listener, but I had never given myself the same care. I had hidden my feelings for years. Now I wasn't hiding anymore. I stood up and followed the stream. The fox followed too. Path beside the water was soft and green. I walked without looking at my phone or thinking about time. I didn't need to know what day it was. I only needed to know who I was becoming. We reached another clearing. This one had flowers growing in the grass. Yellow ones, small and bright. I knelt and touched one gently. The ground felt warm from the sun. I sat down again and closed my eyes. My thoughts came and went like waves. I remembered the friend I lost 2 years ago. She moved to another country and never stayed in touch. I thought we were close. I had trusted her with my secrets. When she stopped replying, it hurt more than I admitted. I remembered my father's last words before he passed away. He told me to take care of my mother, but he didn't tell her to take care of me. That stayed in my heart for a long time. I always felt like I was not enough for her. These memories didn't crush me anymore. I could feel the pain, but it didn't take over. I could see them clearly now, like old photos. They were part of me, but they didn't control me. The fox lay in the grass nearby. It rested its head on its paws. It looked peaceful. I thought about what I wanted from life now. Not what I used to want, not success or approval, but something deeper. I wanted connection, truth. I wanted to know myself again. I took a deep breath and looked around. The forest had given me space to feel all of this. No one had judged me here. No one told me to stop crying or move on. Trees and the fox had simply stayed. I needed to give myself that same kindness. The sun moved higher in the sky. I decided to eat something. I took a piece of bread and an apple from my bag. I ate slowly. Every bite felt more meaningful than before. I drank water and stood up. The fox stood too. We walked again, but I knew we were coming to the end. I could feel it. The path started to look more familiar. The sounds of distant roads and cars reached my ears. I had returned near the edge of the forest. Part of me didn't want to leave, but another part of me knew it was time. I had received what I needed. I had found something I didn't even know I was looking for. We reached a wide field. In the distance, I could see the road and a small bus stop. My phone had a little signal again. I didn't check my messages yet. I wanted one more moment in silence. I turned to the fox. It was standing still, watching me. "Thank you," I said in my thoughts. "You didn't fix my life, but you helped me hear myself." The fox blinked slowly. It stepped forward and gently touched my leg with its nose. Then it turned and walked back toward the forest. I stood there and watched it until it disappeared into the trees. I felt something rise in my chest, not sadness, but gratitude. At the bus stop, I sat down and finally checked my phone. There were messages, of course, a few missed calls, nothing urgent. No one had noticed I was gone for long, and that didn't hurt like it once did. I opened a blank note on my phone. I started to write. I wrote about the forest, about the bench, the box, the woman's notebook, the fox. I wrote about what I had felt. I didn't try to make it sound beautiful. I only told the truth. When the bus arrived, I got on and sat by the window. The world outside looked different now. Not because the trees had changed, but because I had. Back home, I cleaned my room and took a long bath. I lit a candle and sat by the window. I didn't play music. I didn't check social media. I just let the quiet stay with me a little longer. That night, I slept better than I had in months. In the morning, I made tea and opened my laptop. I didn't check job sites or messages. I opened a document and began writing again. Not for work. For me. Words came easier now. Not perfect words. Just honest ones. Each day after that, I took small steps. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I signed up for a local walking group. I visited a park near my apartment and sat there for an hour without checking my phone. I let silence become my friend again. I didn't talk about the fox to anyone. Not at first. Felt too special. Too personal. But I kept writing. I wrote about the moment it looked into my eyes. The way it waited when I needed time. The way it left when it knew I was ready. Weeks passed. One day I returned to the same forest. Not to find the fox, I didn't expect that. I just wanted to walk again. I followed a similar path and sat by the same stream. The bench was still there. The flowers were still growing. I sat down and smiled. Then I left something of my own. A short letter. I wrote it on soft paper and placed it in a dry spot under the same tree. It said, "If you are reading this, you are not alone. Let the forest take care of you. Let yourself feel everything." I folded it and left it there. I stood up and looked around one more time. Then I walked away, quiet, steady, and whole. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.